about how do you want to show up for this experience today? So pause and say, I came in, I've been through some professional learning development sessions since the top of the morning, but now I've landed at this in this space. It's a little after 2. I'm enrolling myself, I'm showing up, and I'm giving myself permission to do what? What are you giving yourself permission to do? How can you land in this space in your most authentic self? How can you imagine your learning, cultivating wellness, resilience? What will you give yourself permission to do? So in other words, are you going to say, you know what, every day I spend time pouring into the lives of other people by teaching. Today, I'm going to do that exactly for myself. I'm going to show up and give myself permission to let other people pour into me so that I walk away more fulfilled and whole. And when I return back to the classroom, I return back to my home, I return back to my community, I'm more full, I'm more aware, and I have new strategies and information because I allowed myself to be. So fill in this blank. I give myself permission to. I give myself permission to.
One of the most important things that we want all of you to walk away with today are concepts that you can begin to implement immediately in your life, in your personal life, in your professional life, and in the service that you give to the community. So we've already talked about welcoming people. We've talked about the Blue Mind. We've talked about getting comfortable, giving yourself permission. So we want to say that all of the things we've already presented are the starting of your self-care toolkit. You are all instructors, or most and many of you, so you recognize the need for a toolkit. You recognize the need to have things ready to go, set aside, in a place that you can access them and then implement them. So we call this a self-care toolkit. And what that means is you are now actively engaged in this workshop, and everything and anything that comes forward, we want you to jot it down into your toolkit so that you can begin to bring it to life and level it up. And when you leave here, you have things that you're ready to go with. That leads us into Senta. How would like them to use this toolkit or start this?
So we're going to do this a couple of ways. The first thing is you've already started the process and the journey. Find a pen and paper, find a tablet, iPad. You could even use your computer. But you're going to want to commit to memory a lot of the information we're going to be sharing today. And as a matter of fact, right now in this moment, we're saying to you that we're going to actually increase your memory by 70%. And how are we going to do that is exactly what we're saying right now. Take a pen and paper, jot down information that's resonating with you so that you commit it to memory and you memorialize the most important information that you're getting today. So we talked about the Blue Mind theory from Dr. Nicholas Wallace. That's something that you can embed right now into your toolkit. We talked about finding your comfort. We talked about the ologies in regards to psychology, neurology, anthropology, which all make up the complexity of teaching. Just take a few moments and begin to jot down. There are 3 things we'll share with you right now is that evidence-based practices is inherent in everything that we're going to present to you. We're going to look at it from 3 modes. We recognize there's a wealth of knowledge and expertise in the room. We tap into that. So professional wisdom is garnered and it's uplifted. The other thing we'll share with you is that we use the most reliable, conscientious research that is made possible in regards to wellness, resilience, and vision for wellness and resilience. And the other thing that's important is that we've been able to travel the world and utilize this information with consumers that are digesting this to make meaning so that we create a workforce that is stabilized, that is committed, and that is healthy and stable, right? So pen and paper, commit to memory what it is that you want to remember. And we're getting ready to introduce another strategy technique that you could use in your wellness as well as in your practice as educators. And that begins with who are you learning for today? Kathleen, walk us through this process. Who are we learning for today?
Well, very often you hear people ask about the why. They always say people need to know their why. And when you know your why, it put meaning behind the work that you're doing, the life that you're living. So we take that why and we embed the concept of who. Because often when we are dedicating our learning to someone else that we can lift, we can share this information with, it empowers us to walk away with new knowledge, but then paying it forward. And I was sharing earlier, Senta, when we were doing a training, my daughter's a collegiate athlete, and her coach had them go out before their meet last week and say, go think about your why and come back. And they all got in a circle and took a Sharpie and wrote their why somewhere on their body before they got out there on the mat. And she wrote mom and dad. And she sent that to us. And she said, you're my who and my why, because you support me and you lift me. And that was a great example of what really motivated her. Every time Senta and I do these trainings and workshops, we know that when people commit their learning to not only themselves, but someone else, they take away much more. So we invite you in your journal or whatever you're writing upon to think about your who. Who are you learning for today? And in the end, we'll come back and wonder, what is it that you're really taking away to share with them? We're going to do this in a waterfall, right, Kosi?
So we're going to ask you to take a few moments and think about, you're thinking about who you're showing up for today. Tell us what you most want to learn today. The title of this session is Cultivating Resilience, Wellness, and a Vision for Actualizing Wellness and Resilience in Your Lives. So we're going to ask you to take a few moments, think about what is it that you want to learn today. It could be an idea, or it could be one word. And Kathleen, tell us how we're going to actually do that process.
We're going to ask you not to send it to us yet. We're going to ask you to hold on. And in the chat box, we're going to ask you to put that word or that sentence or that phrase, but we're going to ask you not to push send. We want everyone to have a moment, everyone to participate, and then we're going to do something called the waterfall. And we're going to count backwards from 3. And when we get to 1, everyone's going to push send, and you're going to see a waterfall of learning come upon the screen. And that Julie and myself and Senta will grab these ideas to make sure that we've captured them, but they're just all going to flow into this space to bring forth the energy and the life. And many of them will be naturally embedded in what we're already bringing, and some of them we'll grab and we'll pull them in as we go. So we're going to count backwards from 3. We're going to ask you to push send, which will be a waterfall of what it is you most want to learn about today. So we got 3, 2, and let's keep our eyes on the chat box. 1. Wow. Wow. I love this. Hesitations, trust, peace, balance, positivity, forgiveness.
A lot of strength
to the community. Yes, go Senta.
Strength, resilience, presence, trust, balance, a lot of balance, positivity, productivity, great deal of peace. I'm seeing that people are not only holding space for themselves and thinking about what they want to learn today, but equally important, what you want to bring back to the community. Forgiveness is showing up. Patience, taking time for me.
Absolutely, a necessity.
Healing. The power word, healing, understanding. Thank you.
Well, Senta, you know, one of my favorite sayings is?
You have a lot of them, so tell me this one.
When you're not the smartest person in the room, you know you're in the right room. And so looking at what's coming up on the screen and looking at the participants on this workshop, we are exactly where we're supposed to be. We are absolutely in the right place. And there is so much unity in what everyone showed up today to give, to receive, and to bring back to the community and themselves. That's awesome. That looks great. Woo. Excellent. Okay, so there are a couple of things we're going to get right into, and our time together today is flying, and we will not want it to be gone. We want it to stay and remain and hold this cup of tea, be together and present in the cup of tea. And we're going to share some key points to understanding wellness and resilience. And again, our invitation to you is, how do I look at this from different lenses? And how do I take from this what I can absolutely begin to implement in my day, in my life, every day? But wellness and resilience is a mindful act. And I saw people say mindfulness. So we're going to invite you to be very present in this moment. We are such multitasking beings. We have always got so much going on that I guarantee some of you might even be multitasking right now. You might think, well, this is a cool workshop, but I can answer some emails and I can make some, text messages. We want to introduce the idea of the cup of tea. Just be present. The tea is warm. The tea has aroma. The tea tastes delicious. And so often when we have that warmth and that aroma and that taste, we don't pay attention to it. We drink it quickly, we put it down, and it's gone. So the analogy is to always remind yourself, enjoy the cup of tea. Slow down, be present. We would like to invite you to be fully present as we walk through not only some of the key points to understanding wellness and resilience, but some of the key ways to implement and bring them to life.
As we shared with you earlier, we're both behavioral specialists, so we want to take a few moments and begin in a place that's incredibly important, and that's talking about behavior. So if you have your pen and paper, just think for a moment, behavior equals actions and habits. Our actions and our habits. All behavior is a form of communication. So let's think about that for a minute. All behavior is a form of communication. So every time we engage, interact, even when we wake up in the morning, the habits, the things that we do in our daily routines, how we communicate what we think, what we feel to other people, they're all related around our actions, our behaviors, our habits. All communication is a form of behavior is another way of thinking too. Behavior is often how we solve our problems. We know this to be true with children, with youth, that they will demonstrate certain behaviors because they're trying to think things through, they're trying to solve problems. We as adults, we do the same exact thing. It just shows up a little bit differently, right? So you might have a colleague, and I'm just looking in the Zoom room right now. I see a Ashley Price and I see a Jose Q, and I'm just going to use these two examples. You two may not even know each other on the campus, but let's just pretend like you do. Ashley, you see Jose on a daily basis, and you're like, hey, Jose, how are you? And Ashley's like, hey, how are you? And you're like, I'm doing great. And this is great communication that's consistent all the time. But one day, you show up on campus, and Jose says to Ashley, how are you doing? And she's like, good. And she goes on about her business. Instantly, Jose says, you know what? Something's different about Ashley, right? Ashley, in return, says to Jose one day, good morning. And Jose looks away and says, I don't know what's so good about it, and keeps walking, right? Those are cues that our behavior has changed. It's a cue that we're communicating something. Right? So just think about all communication is a form, all behavior is a form of communication. How we communicate communicates to other people and ourselves, how we're rising in the day, how we're reflecting on things, how we're processing things, how we're moving in our lives, and how we're cultivating wellness and resilience. And I just use Ashley and Jose as an example. Like I said, you showed up on the screen, but it's a pause point. It's a powerful way to just stop and think. How am I behaving on a daily basis? How am I showing up? And what is that communicating to myself around cultivating wellness and resilience? And what is that communicating to other people? So let's continue this dialogue and these reflections coming forward. And again, we're positioning ourselves in behavior because, as Dr. K. Kathleen said, in order for us to do this work around cultivating wellness and resilience, it has a lot to do with what we implement and choose to implement. And that has everything to do with our behaviors.
Most people spend an extraordinary amount of time trying to change other people. Think about your own relationships, your significant other, your children, your parents. We get so frustrated with other people at times, or the behavior that they're displaying. We spend a lot of time trying to change it. And when in reality, we cannot change someone else's behavior. We cannot change someone else's behavior. We can change our own behavior. And in changing our own behavior, becoming mindful of our behavior, recognizing that their behavior is a form of communication, your behavior is a form of communication. We're going to give you a tool next on what you can do. But if you stop and think, I can't change that behavior. I can change myself, which in essence changes the relationship. But if we focus more reflectively on ourselves, it's going to increase the wellness in relationships, the resiliency in relationships. And my educated guess is that many of you on this call have children, may have grown children, may have small children or middle-aged children, whatever age they may be on the spectrum. All of us communicate. And when we stop and look at behavior and we go, okay, that's communicating something, but what's it communicating? I'm not sure. That's a big challenge. It may take some time to understand. But when we relieve ourselves from the idea that we can change someone else, your interaction with that person has already come down a few notches. Because when I think I have to change you, it exhausts me. But when I think I don't have to change you, I just have to understand you, that switches the energy in the relationship. Again, moving us toward wellness. And Cinta, the next one I want you to slide right into, because if we cannot change someone else's behavior, and I'm saying we can change our own, what does that mean?
We can respond versus react is what Dr. K, what Kathleen is presenting to us. Respond versus react. Let's think about that for a moment. Reaction is what we instinctively do. We tend to act out of our emotions. So when a situation occurs that might be hectic, challenging, or chaotic, we often find ourselves reacting with our emotions. We might fly off the handle really quickly. We might yell. We might not move into the situation in a responsive way. And a responsive way slows down the pace just a little bit. A responsive way says, you know what, there are lots of ways I can introduce or enter into this situation that I'm in right now. I could slow down and I could think, I can yell right now, or I can find my words and think about what is it that I want to communicate and how do I want to communicate so the other person that I'm communicating with receives me. So when we talk about reaction, when we talk about responsivity, it's an important piece to begin to think about, you know, when I'm really stressed, when I get in the car and I'm fighting traffic to get to Santa Monica College and there's a lot going on. I just left my children. My son was crying. My daughter didn't do her homework. I didn't get to eat breakfast. And now I'm in the thick of the traffic getting to SMC. I get to SMC and I forgot the equipment that I was going to use for one of the assignments that I was getting ready to do my lesson plan on. So in that moment, we can react and let our reactions, our emotions get the best of us, or we can pause, slow down, take breath and go, okay, today started this way. It moved into this. The traffic was crazy, obnoxious, but now I'm in this setting and this didn't work out. And as long as I'm calm, that means I can access other ways and other responses to the moment that I'm in right now. But if I'm in that reactionary space, I'm still high strung, I'm still up here, and I'm not able to be leveled and be in the moment to understand there are more than one way that I can respond in the moment that I'm in right now. So we ask you to just pause for a moment and think, because again, it's committing it to memory, it's creating cellular memory. The next time I'm in a stressful situation, I have a choice that's being presented to me right now. I could either react or I can respond. The responsiveness will create neural pathways where you can access what it is that you need to access in your brain. You could slow down and you'll have more options that are available to you. So just think about that as a strategy to cultivating wellness and resilience. I have a choice. I can either respond in this moment or I can react.
The choices you make determine the choices that you have. And mindfulness, self-care, resilience, balance, these are all actions that require choice. You chose to come to this workshop. I know there's other workshops going on. So think all the time, am I putting daily routines into my life that bring balance? We're not asking for perfection. We're not saying wake out of bed extraordinarily happy every day and bounce around the world. But we're saying, come out of bed, put your feet on the ground with intention, and think about balance. So the choices that you make determine the choices that you have. If you overwork yourself, if you don't take breaks for lunch, if you don't spend quality time with the people that you love, those are choices that you're making. So we want you to become very mindful, very self-reflective, and think about choices about your day and what it looks like. Cinta and I are very fortunate to be partners in life, and our work is so important. Our families are number one. Every time we get together, we check in first and foremost on each other's families. We make that a priority in our business relationship. That comes before everything else. A lot of people don't do that. They think that's a waste of time. So think about the choices you make and how they determine the choices that you have when it comes to work-life balance.
So we know that with work-life balance, cultivating wellness and resilience, that it's all connected to what we call domains. And what do we mean by that? We mean mental, spiritual, physical, social, emotional, how we think about things, how we process things, how we rise into moments. And when we talk about spiritual, we don't mean a doctrine. It's a practice that we have that creates wellness in our lives. And that can look a multitude of ways. Some people, their spiritual practices, they might light a candle as a moment of reflection just to begin their hour, their moment, or their day. Some people may pray, some people may chant, some people might take a few moments and read something that's uplifting. Some people might go directly to their phone and access a social media app that gives them a sense of peace and calm. So we're asking you to think about these domains of development because it encompasses holistically how we respond and how we cultivate wellness and resilience. So connecting to all domains of development, not just saying, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to run, and just think about running as an exercise. Kathleen and I would say, oh, let's expand that. Let's look at it more holistically. When you are running, not only you're catching breath and you're doing a physical activity, we also know that running, that catching the breath, that physical activity expands our minds. It opens us up because we are activating different centers of the brain. We also talk about social emotional. Right? I take this run because I know if I take care of myself, I'm in a better position to take care of the people that I love and care about. So we talk a lot about looking at wellness and resilience holistically and being mindful that even that one example that I gave you in regards to running or jogging every morning, not only are you doing it for yourself, but if your mind is in a better place and your body feels healthy, when you come back into the house and you greet your loved one, your dog, your cat, your wife, your sister, your brother, whomever it is, your mindset's in a different place and your heart set's in a different place because you took a moment to take care of yourself. So we look at development holistically, not just in kind of fragmented or sectional pieces. So we ask you to do the same as you're thinking about, what do I already do in my life that cultivates wellness and resilience? And how can I expand that and begin to think about it holistically, that it's not only good for me, but it's also good for the people that I care about and love. One way of conceptualizing that. And this right here is one of my
This, if you don't write anything else down today, please write this down. Please write this down. This is words to live by, and it is so much easier said than done. Do not let someone else's behavior give you a behavior. Wow. Let's think about that for a moment. We are human. This is about what we said earlier, to respond and not react. But reaction is innate, it's instinctive, it happens. But you could be talking to a child as tiny as 2, and they could be misbehaving and yelling at you, and you're a grown person, and all of a sudden you're acting like a 2-year-old. You're right there face to face having an argument with a 2-year-old. Then that grows into teenagers. Then that grows into young adults, students in your classroom, colleagues in your workplace, family in your home. It is so difficult. But I can tell you, Kosi and I, over 3 decades, when we share this, this is the one of some, but this is the one that people love because they say it's hard to do, but if you become mindful of it, Write this on a Post-it, make it a mantra, put it on your mirror. Do not let someone else's behavior give you a behavior. That's a part of self-care. That's a part of balance. That's a part of resilience, because you are going to have a lot thrown at you throughout your day, different personalities, different people. Stay true to yourself and do not let someone's behavior give you a behavior. Try that. Try that. We're gonna have to have a follow-up session, because I'm telling you right now, this is so much easier said than done, but it is a great practice.
So that's a great practice. We're going to give you a great reminder. Ultimately, challenging behaviors are anything that challenges you. Often we want to turn the finger on someone else and say, I'm this way because you made me this way, or I'm upset because you've done X, Y, and Z. But here we're saying that ultimately, if we find ourselves being challenged in our habits and our actions, that we have to turn and look at ourselves and say, this may be more about me than it is the other person. Or how can I get curious about this behavior and how it's impacting me? So just take a few moments and think. Ultimately, challenging behaviors are anything that challenges you. So then that puts the power and the source of empowerment back to us, that if there is something going on that is challenging us, that we have the power and we have the tools, we have the resources and the information to shift it. It's information. So continue to think about these moments of how behavior has affected you, impacted you. And again, Kathleen and I keep thinking holistically. We're talking about ourselves, but everything that we do in life is in relationship with other people. So we're going to give you another concrete example about how child development is like human development is like child development. And we're going to break it down for all the parents that were in the room, because Kathleen, when you said, I believe that some of you in the room might be parents, I saw a lot of head nods. I saw some additional lean-ins, and I also saw some smiles on people's faces. So can you walk us through, why does a teenager act like a 2-year-old, and what does this have to do with wellness and resilience?
Well, absolutely. This is one of our favorite things to talk about. And again, that we know we have an educated audience. You may be very familiar with the concepts that we're presenting in this section of our time together. But we want to remember that this is all about self-reflection. This is about understanding behavior in ourselves and others. This is about resilience. This is about balance and well-being. So we talked about, gosh, so often people don't understand different ages and stages and why people act certain ways. And yet the science of child and adolescent development gives some very clear scientific research-based evidence reasons that people may act the way that they do. And once we begin to process this, understand this, and look at it differently, woo, it starts to bring some balance back into any situation. But we thought we'd just share with you briefly but mindfully the concept of why does a teenager act like a 2-year-old. And we're just going to talk about 6 basic things within developmental science that are facts and that make you go, wow, things that make you go, So pruning. As humans, we do this natural process of pruning the neurons because we are born with more neurons than we'll ever use in our lifetime. So we begin this process when we're about to be 2 in our toddler stages and ages. We begin to prune, naturally shed, naturally remove those neurons that are not serving any purpose. But in order for our brains to prune, you have to recognize that that developmental brain is under construction, majorly under construction. Okay, so this happens when we're around 2. This happens again as we're moving into adolescence. And a lot of people don't recognize and realize that our teenagers are going under major brain construction. Probably the second, or within those first 2 major developmental milestones is this pruning of the brain. Well, when the brain is pruning, it causes us to need a lot of sleep. So toddlers, they nap a couple times a day if we're lucky. They have a lot of energy, but they do need to sleep. Our adolescents need more sleep than they get. I don't know if you've had an adolescent or an emerging adult, because remember, the prefrontal cortex takes a lot longer to develop. So some of these people might be the students that you teach in your classrooms. It may help you understand them somewhat behaviorally, developmentally. But adolescents or emerging adults, they could sleep all day on a Saturday. They could sleep in during the week. They don't want to get up at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. at times. So sleep becomes very critical. Nutrition becomes critical. These little toddlers are just beginning to learn about how to forage food on their own, right? And they're figuring it out. And yet we have to guide them and stay on top of it because sleep and nutrition impacts behavior. Our adolescents, I don't know about you, but those that I've known and encountered don't have the best balanced nutrition, may want to live off of Takis and soda or something of that nature. So we kind of have to stay on top of that. So we're talking about brain maturation under construction. We're talking about sleep. We're talking about nutrition. We're talking about communication. Toddlers are just learning and beginning to communicate, trying to find, well, how do I express these emotions? And yet they still don't know how. So they may break right out into a temper tantrum. Well, have you ever met an adolescent or an emerging young adult? They don't know how to communicate because they're moving in their cognitive levels and they're shifting. They too may have temper tantrums. They may look different. They may be slamming a door. They may be throwing something, yelling or screaming. But again, wow, a 2-year-old and a teenager or an adolescent. And then the last thing we'll share with you is the concept of just social emotional awareness. And this is where we tie it back as we keep moving forward and offering you ways to bring balance into your life. Whatever developmental stage your child may be going through, or your nieces and nephews, or your grandchildren, wherever they may be, we bring balance into our lives when we are mindful and conscientious of where children and adolescents and others are developmentally. We remember not to react, but to respond. We remember that behaviors, communication, all of these things tie into developing healthy relationships with balance. So now you're going to look at adolescents and young emerging adults a little bit differently because you're going to think, wow, you're developmentally the same as a toddler. So let me give some room for error and let me constructively guide you and let me communicate with you to a path where we have balance and wellness in our relationships.
La que sabe.
Aha, transitioning into what many of you may be familiar with, which has been really deeply brought to life the past couple of, you'd say within the last decade, but certainly within the last 5 years in the state of California. Senta and I have been deeply entrenched in adverse work. And ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And what we've learned is that when children have adversity in childhood, it impacts their physical well-being. It impacts their emotional well-being. It impacts their developmental well-being. And that transitions right into adulthood. So all of you right now in this workshop, when you're coming here to think about self-care, resilience, you want to think about your own life. You want to reflect because our bodies hold trauma. So think back into life. How was life throughout your journey? Adversity, it comes in different forms for many of us. The research really likes to look at adverse childhood experiences, likes to look from a macro view at adverse community experiences. Kosi's going to talk a lot about adverse curricular experiences and how that's related to all of you. And then we want to bring you into the present by talking about adverse current experiences. So we ask you to take a moment in your self-care toolkit and in the journaling that you're doing to reflect on yourself. We don't stop enough and think, wow, if ACEs impact us physically, emotionally, socially, developmentally, as we go throughout life, they can still be impacting us still are in our adulthood. So how do we find balance? So adversity when you're a child can be coming from a divorced family, coming from a family in which there is abuse, coming from a family in which maybe people lost their jobs and financial struggles took hold, not having a place to live. I'm going to just do community next, Senta, and then I'm going to pass it over to you because I was on a roll and about to roll into community. But when we think about adversity in our communities, that too can look different for all of us. Do we live in communities where we feel safe? Do we live in communities where there's green space? Do we live in communities where there's equity and access to healthcare and education? But also community embraces the concept of, do we live in times where there may be natural disasters or things that impacted our community. My family lost everything in the California wildfires, and my children were in high school, and the impact of becoming homeless overnight and having to learn resilience and having to learn how to put a roof over our head. All of this is how we look back and think, did we have adversity in some way or another? And how can we be resilient, rise above, and become stronger because of it? But most importantly, take time to have self-care because of it. Since I'm going to pass over the microphone for curricular.
And I'll happily take it. Thank you for laying the foundation, helping us to think about adverse childhood experiences, adverse community experiences, which segues right into thinking about adverse curricular experiences. And this is a moment to either think about ourselves or to think about the students that are enrolled at Santa Monica College. So a pause point right here, thinking about the students that are enrolled at Santa Monica College and or thinking about ourselves. And what we're going to ask you to do is to think about, what messages did you receive about education as you were growing up? What messages did you receive when you were in college yourselves? Were you looked at as capable, competent? Were you looked at as someone that deserves to be mentored? A lot of students that enroll at Santa Monica College, all of them, really, all of them, had life experiences in education prior to enrolling at SMC and prior to coming to your class. And some of those narratives and stories are not all positive. There are a lot of students that have been deeply impacted by messages they have received by people who represent the educational institution. So the reason why we bring that up is because depending on, and if we could just have you use your emoji, any emoji you want to use, but just think for a moment, do you think your classes have an identity itself? So think about the class you might teach on a Monday from 4 to 7. Think about a class that you might teach on Wednesday. Think about a class you teach on Tuesday, Thursday. When you think about those classes, for those of you who are educators in the room right now, would you say each one of those classes have their own dynamic based on the students that have enrolled in that class? And if it's a yes, just give me an emoji. It could be a thumbs up, it could be a heart, it could be a happy face. Have you ever, in all your experience, and I'm speaking to the educators right now, in all of your experience, have you noticed that your classes tend to have its own identity?
Okay, I'm seeing a lot of hearts coming through. Thumbs up and hearts.
Okay, hearts and thumbs up. Excellent. And I'm looking at the camera and I could see some people smiling. I could also see people kind of nodding their heads. The reason why we're asking you to think about that is because that means we actually have a responsibility, because we're bearing witness to what students are communicating to us about their path. So when a student doesn't get the grade that they feel like they should have received, there are a range of reactions and or responses that those students have. And depending on how we experience, see, and perceive students and our grading practices and processes, we can have a range of emotions and how we respond and how we react. So everything that we do, what we're saying to you is we're signaling either edification of building up students or adversity tearing down students. If we're not taking care of ourselves, cultivating wellness and resilience, then those other aspects of reactions tend to show up, and it diminishes the value, the impact of what we perceive and believe is effective when it comes to teaching. So we have higher burnout rates, we have higher turnover rates, we show up to the work, but we're not engaged. We physically show up, but we're not engaged at the level that we could be. So there's a responsibility, and we all know this. There's a responsibility as educators when we teach, and we're asking you to pause for a moment and think about, what's the identity of the classroom that I'm in right now? What do the students represent? What are their life experiences? What are their lived experiences? And do I care enough to know about that? Because somehow it's going to show up in the classroom. It's going to show up whether or not students are locked in, whether or not they're turning in their assignments, how they write, how they respond. It all sends a narrative to us. And then we are tasked with the responsibility about how we want to show up and respond. Not react, but how we want to show up and respond. So we talk about these things because they're incredibly important to position our minds all the time, and everything is interrelated. And again, we just pause for a moment to talk about what does adversity look like in the life of a child and how does that follow us into our adulthood. We talked about community experiences. We talked about curricular experiences. The last one we're going to lean in on is current experiences. And Cakes, you talked about that a little bit, but I know you can go deeper on it.
Well, the deepness, I think, will be when we move into some of the tools we're going to give them to create balance when it comes to current life experiences that may have adversity within them. So your childhood, your community, your curricular experiences, they may all have been fine, but you now at this stage of life may be coming up against some things that are very difficult and hold adversity. Both Senta and I lost a number of family members this past year, and how to overcome and how to get through grief and how to move forward, how to find resilience. So we use ACEs to also say adverse current experiences. And now in the short time that we have left, which seems to be flying by, we're going to walk through, and we would like you in your journal, in your self-care toolkit, to look through. I think, Kosi, we go by ABC. And we move into the 10 that we'd like them to have in this moment.
Right here.
Excellent. So wellness and resilience practices, we'd like to invite you in your equity toolkit where you're journaling to write down. We like to use these and invite people to do a scale of 1 to 5. When it comes to each one of these, where are you? 1 being best, 5 needing a little bit more attention or time. So you can do that, or you can simply write them down and then reflect on them later. How do they show up in your life? And these are some of the key things we want you to take away when it comes to wellness and resilience practices.
You want to start?
Well, we want to push this because everybody acts like I don't have time for self-care. My life is too busy. I can't stop. I go from work, I come home, I do the dishes, I clean, I make dinner, I help with homework, whatever it might be. We've worked with so many educators across the globe, and we've come up with lists of 10 seconds of self-care. So we want to encourage you within every 30 minutes is great, but if it has to be within the hour, we get it. But 10 seconds of self-care. And people say so many wonderful things that they can do in 10 seconds. They can pray, they can shout, they can jump, they can walk outside, they can tell someone they love them, they can pet their animals, they can hug a child, there's so many beautiful things. So we want to encourage you to practice and come up with a list of 10 seconds that you can promote and live self-care.
We also want to encourage you to think about the supportive relationships in your lives, because that is a life source, an opportunity for you to continue to cultivate wellness and resilience. There are 3 strategies we're going to introduce to you quickly but mindfully. The first one is a square squad. The second is a village chart. And the third is your personal board of directors. Okay, village chart, square squad, and your personal board of directors. Take a few moments and think about the people in your life that you know, no matter what, would have you, would take care of you, that would risk for you, that would tell you, and excuse the vernacular, when you're, I won't use that word, when you're not doing right and you need to be doing right, and they tell you to cut it out, right? To face what it is that you need to face. But you know, when they tell you, they do it out of love, they do it out of care, they understand you, they know you, and they want the best for you. We need people like that in our lives to help cultivate our wellness and resilience. We don't have time to go through them right now, but just think about, I got a personal board of directors. I got someone that can help me in regards to, I have a square squad. I don't need 15 million friends. I just need 3 solid friends or 5 people in my life that I know I can turn to and I can talk to, and they're there to help support me.
Creative outlets are incredibly important. So self-care for some may look very different than for others, but think about, what is your creative outlet? Are you an artist? Are you a musician? Are you someone who likes to garden? People often forget this is self-care. So if there's something you love to do, find time every day to do it. Find time every day to do it.
Think about goals and intentions. Some people are turned off by goals because, like, think about the first of the year, we have all these goals and then we actually don't even end up accomplishing one of them. So we talk about intentions. What are your intentions? Because intentions will change practice, intentions will change behavior. So think about developing a relationship with intention, with purpose, with the concept, a small practice, an SDP, a small daily practice that you want to try and implement on a daily basis. Begin small and you'll be amazed with how much you can actually change, and that will turn into behaviors and actions of habit.
Commitment to communication. We talked so much today and deeply about the importance of communication when you're looking for work-life balance, when you're looking for self-care. So commit yourself to understanding how you communicate, what are your skills, what are your strengths, and then what are areas that you can grow in, and some of the tips we may have given you today on how you can look at communication within your own personal life and your professional life.
And I'm going to bring us out and just share 3 more, and then I'm going to ask if you could do what you always do so incredibly well and bring us home, okay? The last 3 things we're going to ask you to think about is check your routines. Check and see, what are you doing on a daily basis to take care of yourselves, right? Even when you start your morning, are you starting with intentions? Today is going to be an outstanding day. Today is going to be an excellent day. What do you tell yourself to get yourself in that position of starting your day? And equally important, what do you do at night to wind down, to get your mind ready to rest? It's amazing what happens to our brains and bodies with restoration when we take time to rest. The other thing is spend some time in nature. Nature is one of the most healing natural, fundamental experiences that we could do every single day. And then the very last one that I'll introduce that's incredibly important is take a moment and do an environmental scan. The next time you're on campus, if you're there today or you're going tomorrow, or you're there next month, look around and see, where are the rejuvenation spots on campus? Where are the parts where you find tranquility, where you find peace? You'll find them on the campus. So we talk a lot about embedding, looking naturalistically at what's before you, but looking at it today with maybe a new pair of eyes. So at this time, all good things must come to new beginnings. We don't say to ends, and I'm going to toss it over to Kathleen.
We never like to say we're wrapping it up. We like to say we're wrapping it in, because we do hope to come back together in community with all of you in the work that you do. Senta, maybe you could put our email address into the chat box. Emailing one of us is emailing both of us. And if you have further questions or discussions or ways that you want to stay connected, please, please do. We're very, very honored and very humbled to walk with all of you and to be with you today. We thank you for choosing this workshop. We know you have other workshops coming at 3. And so we want to say thank you for showing up. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for speaking up on behalf of yourself. On behalf of yourself. So go love those children and love the work that you do, but most importantly, go love some you. Thank you so much. Be safe.
Thank you so much to the 2 of you. It was definitely a powerful reminder to take care of ourselves. Thanks everyone for attending. Also note that you will be receiving a survey for feedback on this day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.